In our previous lessons, we've created simple HTML pages and seen the product of those HTML pages displayed in a web browser. But now's a good time to stop for a moment and think about the way that our pages are displayed in a web browser from the web browser or viewer's point of view. How is the browser interpreting my HTML code? I can see what the web browser sees by right-clicking or by control-clicking if you have a one-button mouse. One of the pop-up options that you'll see when you click inside the browser window is View Page Source. This option is also available from the View menu in your browser. Page Source. When you bring up the page source, you notice that you see the HTML code that you've written. Well, why is it called HTML code to us, and why is the web browser calling it page source? What's the difference? Essentially, there is no difference. We're talking about two different terms that mean the same thing, just with a change in perspective. You, the website designer, create HTML code and then hand it off to a webmaster, or you put it into production yourself on a web server that you have access to. That file is then served up over the internet by request when someone clicks on a link that's mapped to your website and a web page is displayed. But from the viewer's point of view, the source that you've written is the foundation of the web page that they want to view. Personally, I'm one of those folks who doesn't particularly care how the engine of my car works as long as the car takes me from A to B. So too with your HTML code. The viewer doesn't really care how you created HTML and how that HTML structures the layout of the page. Web visitors just want to come to your site and see the page. And the web browser doesn't care how you've laid out your page. The web browser is just going to simply display that page to the best of its ability based on the HTML code that you wrote. Provided that you wrote HTML code that was valid and well-structured, you have a reasonable expectation that that page will be displayed properly. When we look at this source code, which, as we said a moment ago, is the browser's way of referring to your HTML code, you can see that the web browser is displaying the HTML tags in color. From a functional point of view, this makes no difference whatsoever. This is just a helper to help the viewer or yourself understand the code that you're seeing. And we'll see this again when we take a look at Dreamweaver in a future chapter. But one thing you want to remember is that when your HTML code is read by the browser, it is interpreted sequentially. The web browser looks at the first line of code, and then the next line, and the next line, and the next line, each subsequent line taking precedence over the first. Now for our examples so far, we've had nothing taking precedence over anything, so it doesn't matter from our point of view up until now what items take precedence over any other, because all items have equal precedence. But as we start to look at cascading style sheets, we're going to define rules and set conditions when those rules would take effect. We'll explore the concept of inheritance and when one rule will overwrite the default properties of a given element. We've touched on that a bit when we formatted the word directions using the style attribute and a CSS rule. And as we move forward, we'll start to set conditions when one rule would apply versus another.